The first thing Marcus noticed wasn't the lights. It was the pattern. The cruiser had been behind him for 6 minutes. 6 exact minutes. Close. Fall back. Close again. Testing. Interstate 93 stretched ahead in long, empty lines of asphalt that reflected the pale orange glow of street lamps. Midnight traffic was thin. Cold air pressed against the windshield. The city skyline hovered faintly in the distance like something indifferent. Marcus adjusted his mirror half an inch. He didn't speed up. He didn't slow down. 62 and a 65. Signal used properly. Lane centered. Hands steady at 10 and 2. He exhaled once. Then, the lights came on. Red and blue exploded across the inside of his car, flickering against the rearview mirror like accusation. There it is. He signaled calmly and pulled onto the shoulder. Engine idling, window lowered halfway. Interior light off, both hands placed clearly on the steering wheel. He didn't look back. He didn't need to. He could already feel the energy of the approach. The patrol cruiser stopped at an angle behind him. A second cruiser pulled in seconds later. Back up. For a traffic stop. The driver's door of the first cruiser opened slowly. Officer Ryan Caldwell stepped out. He moved like a man who had been right for too long. Broad shoulders, tight jaw, belt heavy with authority. Flashlight already in hand before he reached the door. The second officer, younger, slimmer, lingered near the passenger side of the cruiser, watching. Caldwell approached Marcus's window without greeting. License and registration. Flat toned, no warmth. Marcus turned his head slowly. Good evening, officer. Caldwell's eyes hardened. I said license and registration. Marcus nodded once. I'm reaching for my wallet. Slow movement. Predictable. He retrieved his wallet carefully, opened the glove compartment with deliberate clarity. Registration's in the glove box. Caldwell watched his hands like they were weapons. Marcus handed over the documents. Caldwell scanned the license. Where you headed? Home. From? Work? What kind of work? Consulting. Caldwell smirked faintly. Consulting what? Compliance. Caldwell paused. Something about that word irritated him. You were drifting. I wasn't. You calling me wrong? I'm stating that I wasn't drifting. The air shifted. Caldwell leaned closer into the window. You nervous? No. You look nervous. I'm not. The second cruiser's engine shut off. The younger officer approached quietly. Caldwell handed the license back halfway, then stopped. Step out of the vehicle. Marcus complied. Cold air met him sharply as he stepped onto the shoulder, hands visible, body relaxed. Caldwell circled him once. What's in the car? Personal belongings. That's not what I asked. Marcus remained silent. You got weapons? No. Drugs? No. You mind if I take a look? Marcus met his eyes evenly. I do not consent to searches. The words landed like a stone in still water. Caldwell's smile thinned. You don't consent? No. You hiding something? No. Then let me check. I do not consent to searches. The younger officer shifted. Sir, he muttered quietly, we don't have probable cause. Caldwell didn't look at him. Turn around. Marcus complied. Cold steel cuffs clicked around his wrists. Passing cars slowed. Headlights lingered. Phones appeared through windshields. Caldwell shoved Marcus toward the hood. You resisting? No. You sure? Yes. Caldwell began searching the vehicle anyway. Glove box emptied, center console removed, back seat lifted, trunk opened, panels tugged. Nothing. He grew more aggressive. Still nothing. Marcus remained still against the hood, cheek near cold metal. Breathing, steady. You're real calm for someone in cuffs, Caldwell muttered. I was trained to remain calm. Trained by who? Marcus didn't answer. Silence felt intentional. Caldwell stepped around him. You think you're smarter than me? No. You think you're untouchable? No. The neutrality felt like defiance. Without warning, Caldwell struck Marcus across the face. The sound cracked through the night. The younger officer inhaled sharply. Marcus's lips split. Blood touched his chin. He did not flinch. "You just escalated this," Marcus said quietly. Caldwell's breathing sharpened. "You're under arrest." "For what?" "Resisting." "I have not resisted." "You will." They shoved him into the cruiser. Dash camera recording, body cams active, civilian phones capturing everything. Inside the cruiser, Marcus stared forward. His heartbeat did not spike. His breathing did not quicken. He had anticipated this. At the precinct, paperwork began. Caldwell typed aggressively. Failure to comply, suspicious behavior, aggressive posture. Marcus sat alone in a holding room. An officer cataloged his belongings: wallet, phone, watch. When the wallet opened, the officer paused. There was a second credential inside. Subtle, not obvious at first glance. He removed it slowly. His expression changed. He looked toward the hallway. Caldwell entered. "What's the delay?" The officer swallowed. "You need to see this." Caldwell snatched the credential, read it once, read it again. His face drained of color. Federal Bureau of Investigation, Internal Oversight Division, Special Agent Marcus Hale, Embedded Compliance Task Force. Caldwell's jaw locked. "This isn't real." Marcus met his eyes calmly. "It is." The air compressed. "You could have said something," Caldwell muttered. "I told you you were making a mistake." Silence swallowed the room. The younger officer stepped back instinctively. Marcus continued evenly. "I've been assigned to evaluate excessive force complaints in this district for 8 months. Caldwell's breathing changed. "You set me up." "No," Marcus replied. "You revealed yourself." Outside, 3 black SUVs entered the lot. Unmarked, purposeful. Agents exited in coordinated silence. The atmosphere inside the precinct shifted instantly. Footsteps echoed down the hallway. An agent entered the holding room. "Sir." The respect in that word hit harder than the slap. Marcus stood. He removed the cuffs himself. He stepped into the hallway. Officers stared. Caldwell stood frozen. Marcus addressed the room calmly. "This department is under active federal review. Tonight's incident has been documented." Caldwell's weapon was removed, his badge taken. He was escorted down the same corridor he once walked with authority, now silent, now exposed. But this was only the beginning, because Marcus Hale had not come for one officer. He had come for a pattern, and the pattern was deeper than anyone in that building realized. The younger officer remained standing near the doorway, eyes fixed on the floor. Marcus turned toward him. "What's your name?" "Officer Jason Miller." "Did you object?" "Yes, sir." Marcus nodded once. "Good." Miller swallowed. "It won't make me popular." Marcus's voice remained calm. "Integrity rarely does." Outside, news had already begun spreading. Civilian footage uploaded, comment threads forming, community groups reactivating old complaints. Inside the building, fear had changed sides. And in a quiet office at the back of the precinct, a captain stared at the federal credentials on the desk in front of him. He whispered to no one in particular. "How long has he been here?" Marcus stood at the end of the hallway, watching the building breathe differently. Authority had shifted, not loudly, but permanently, and somewhere deep in the system that had grown comfortable with unchecked power. A crack had just formed. The next morning, the precinct woke up like it always did. Coffee burning on hot plates, radios spitting out call signs, boots on tile, jokes that pretended nothing could touch the people wearing badges. But the building felt it. Everyone did. Not because Marcus Hale had raised his voice, not because he'd made a speech, because fear had quietly changed owners. Caldwell sat in a small interview room with no windows, the kind the department used for suspects. His wrists were free now, but his body still held the memory of metal cuffs, because the room itself was a kind of cuff. A table bolted to the floor. 2 chairs. A camera dome in the corner. He stared at the door like it owed him answers. Across the hall, Agent Dana Pierce walked with Marcus, her pace calm, her eyes scanning the precinct the way predators scan terrain, not for violence, but for movement. She had the posture of someone who didn't need to prove she belonged. "The captain's in his office," she said quietly. "He's panicking." Marcus's voice stayed low. "He should." Pierce glanced at him. "You want to take him first?" Marcus paused for a breath, not because he was unsure, but because he was measuring timing. "No," he said. "I want the building to understand something before leadership tries to rewrite it." Pierce nodded once. She understood his language. They walked past a row of officers who stopped talking the moment Marcus passed, not because they knew his name, because they recognized the shift in the air. One of them, older, tired, stared too long, jaw tight. Another whispered something under his breath that sounded like traitor. A younger cop looked down at his hands like he was suddenly unsure what they represented. Marcus didn't react. He'd seen this before in other cities, other precincts. The first response is always denial. The second is anger. The third is fear. The fourth is bargaining. And somewhere between the third and fourth, truth starts to show up, quietly like blood seeping through fabric. In the records room, an evidence clerk sat stiff-backed at his desk, hands trembling over a keyboard. Pierce slid a folder onto the desk. "Body cam archives," she said. The clerk swallowed. "We don't just—" Marcus's voice cut in, calm but absolute. "You do now." The clerk's eyes darted toward the door. "We need authorization." Pierce placed a badge on the desk, federal seal catching the light. "This is authorization." The clerk's throat worked. He nodded and typed, pulling up the system. A red warning box flashed across the monitor. "Access restricted." The clerk hesitated. Pierce leaned slightly closer. "Who restricts it?" The clerk's voice came out thin. "Lieutenant Markham!" Marcus's eyes didn't change. "Then Lieutenant Markham is next." The clerk entered a password. Another warning, another restriction. He shook his head helplessly. "It's locked deeper than my access." Marcus didn't raise his voice. He just said, "Bring me Markham." Word traveled faster than radios. By the time Lieutenant Markham arrived, the hallway behind him was crowded with officers pretending they were just walking through. He wore the expression of someone trying to look annoyed so no one could see. He was afraid. "What's this about?" Markham asked, too loudly. Marcus looked at him calmly. "Unlock the archives." Markham's lips pressed tight. "We have protocol." Marcus held his gaze. "You mean you have habit?" Markham's jaw clenched. "You can't just—" Pierce slid a federal order across the desk. Markham read it. His eyes flickered. The document wasn't dramatic. It didn't threaten. It didn't shout. It simply existed. It carried weight that did not ask for permission. Markham swallowed. "This isn't necessary." Marcus's voice stayed steady. "If it wasn't necessary, you wouldn't have locked it." The room went silent. Markham glanced toward the hallway, where faces hovered like ghosts. His pride fought his survival for a second. Survival won. He typed the master code. The red warning box vanished. The archives opened, and with that small click of access, the building took its first involuntary breath of panic. Pierce began pulling footage immediately, date ranges, officer EDs, incident categories. Marcus watched the screen as thumbnails populated like a grim mosaic. Hundreds, not a few, not isolated, hundreds. Traffic stops, street stops, home entries, arrests, use of force incidents flagged in internal notes, but never escalated. He didn't need to watch them all to know what he'd find, but he watched anyway. Because this wasn't about proving something to himself. It was about making it undeniable to everyone else. Pierce opened one file. Officer Caldwell. 2 months ago, a young black teenager in a hoodie. Stop for matching a description. Pat down, forced to the ground. Complaint filed. Case marked unsubstantiated. Another clip. Caldwell again. A middle-aged black woman pulled over for improper lane change. Search without consent. Vehicle tossed. Citation issued anyway to justify the stop. Complaint filed. Disappeared into the same folder labeled closed. Pierce clicked another. Different officer. Same tone. Same escalation. Same language. Marcus leaned back slightly, jaw tightening just once. Not anger. Recognition. In the hallway, Markham stood like a statue, watching his world crack from a screen he couldn't control anymore. Marcus turned to him. "Who taught Caldwell he could do that?" Marcus asked quietly. Markham's mouth opened. No answer came out. Marcus continued, voice calm. "Who watched those complaints disappear and decided it was easier than confronting them?" Markham swallowed hard. "We're understaffed." Marcus nodded once, as if acknowledging the excuse for what it was. An excuse. "Understaffed doesn't make violence invisible," he said. Markham's eyes flashed. "You don't understand what it's like out there." Marcus's gaze didn't shift. "I do," he said quietly. "I just don't let it become permission." The words landed heavy. Markham looked away. Pierce spoke without looking up from the footage. "We've got supervisors signing off on reports that contradict video," she said. "Look at this timestamp." Marcus leaned in. A report claimed the suspect lunged. Video showed the suspect standing still. The officer lunged. Marcus's voice stayed even. "Print it! Flag it! Chain it!" Pierce nodded, fingers moving faster. Outside the records room, footsteps approached, quick, anxious. Captain Robert Ellison appeared in the doorway. He looked like a man trying not to sweat through authority. "Special Agent Hale," Ellison said, voice forced into calm. Marcus turned. Ellison's eyes flicked briefly to Pierce, then to the screen, then back to Marcus. "I want to cooperate fully," Ellison said quickly. Marcus didn't move. "Good," he replied. "Start by telling me why your archives were restricted." Ellison's jaw tightened. "That's a management decision." Marcus's expression didn't change. "Name who made it." Ellison hesitated, half a second too long. Markham shifted. Pierce paused her typing to listen. Ellison exhaled. "It was a departmental measure to protect." "Name," Marcus repeated, voice still calm. Ellison swallowed. "Deputy Chief Stanton." The name moved through the hallway like an electrical current. Deputy Chief Stanton was not just a supervisor. He was political. He knew the mayor. He attended the charity galas. He was the kind of authority that didn't wear a uniform when it wanted to be untouchable. Marcus nodded once, as if confirming a piece of a puzzle he already suspected. "Bring me Stanton," he said. Ellison's face tightened. "That may not be—" Marcus stepped closer, just enough to shift Ellison's breathing. "This is not a request," Marcus said quietly. Ellison held his gaze, trying to find leverage. He found none. He nodded once. "Understood." When Ellison left, Markham whispered, "You're going after Stanton?" Marcus looked at him. "I'm going after the structure," he said. "Stanton is just part of it." Markham's lips trembled slightly. "He'll fight." Marcus's voice remained steady. "They all do, until they can't." Pierce continued pulling footage, but the building was already reacting. Down the hall, officers gathered in small clusters, whispering. The ones who were clean looked nervous, because they didn't know who would be blamed. The ones who weren't clean looked nervous because they knew. Officer Jason Miller, the young cop from the stop, stood near a vending machine staring at the floor. His shoulders were tense like he was carrying guilt that didn't belong to him, but still felt heavy. Marcus saw him. He walked over, unhurried. Miller looked up and flinched slightly, as if expecting punishment. Marcus's voice stayed calm. "You did the right thing last night." Miller swallowed. "It doesn't feel like it." "Doing right rarely does at first," Marcus said. Miller's eyes flicked around. "They're looking at me like I betrayed them." Marcus leaned slightly closer. "You didn't betray them," he said. "You betrayed a lie they were benefiting from." Miller's throat tightened. "I didn't stop him," he whispered. Marcus's gaze held steady. You objected, and you're still here. That matters. Miller's voice cracked. What if they come for me? Marcus's response was immediate, quiet, certain. Then they exposed themselves, too. Miller stared at him like he couldn't decide whether to feel relieved or terrified. Both were valid. Across town, Deputy Chief Stanton sat in an office with framed photos and polished wood. When he received the call from Ellison, his face didn't change, but his eyes did. He asked one question. Is the agent still in the building? Ellison's voice came through strained. Yes, sir. Stanton exhaled. Contain it, he said. I'll be there. And just like that, the next wave began. Because the moment power realizes it's being watched, it doesn't always surrender. Sometimes it strikes back. Back at the precinct, Marcus stood in the records room, watching Pierce compile evidence into an unbreakable chain. He knew what would come next. Stanton would arrive smiling. He would offer cooperation. He would demand respect. He would try to reframe the story as a misunderstanding, an isolated incident, a bad apple. He would attempt to protect the tree. Marcus didn't hate Stanton. He didn't need to. He had learned long ago that hatred makes you loud, and loud makes you predictable. Marcus preferred calm, because calm makes people underestimate you, and when they underestimate you, they show you the truth. He looked at the screen again. Caldwell's face appeared in footage after footage. Escalation after escalation. Patterns. The problem wasn't that Caldwell existed. The problem was that Caldwell had been allowed to become normal. Marcus straightened. He looked at Pierce. How long until the package is ready? He asked. Pierce didn't look up. 2 hours, she said. Maybe less. Marcus nodded. Good, he said. Because in 2 hours, Deputy Chief Stanton would walk through those doors, and the building would learn the difference between authority and accountability. Not through shouting, through collapse. Deputy Chief Harold Stanton did not rush. Men like him never did. When his black sedan rolled into the precinct parking lot, he stepped out in a tailored overcoat instead of uniform blues. His badge was clipped subtly at his belt, not displayed. He carried authority like a quiet investment, meant to be noticed without appearing desperate for attention. Inside the building, conversations died as he walked past. He didn't look left or right. He walked straight toward the records room. Marcus saw him before he spoke. Stanton stopped just outside the doorway, taking in the scene. Federal agents at terminals, files open, Lieutenant Markham pale, Captain Ellison rigid. Then his eyes landed on Marcus, measured, assessing. You must be Special Agent Hale, Stanton said, voice smooth, almost warm. Marcus stepped forward. Deputy Chief Stanton. They shook hands, firm, controlled, two men accustomed to command, neither trying to dominate the other, yet. I understand there's been an incident, Stanton said. There's been a pattern, Marcus replied. Stanton's smile did not break. I'm sure we can discuss that privately. Marcus held his gaze. There's nothing private about civil rights violations. A flicker, small, but visible. Stanton glanced toward the monitors. You've accessed internal archives. Yes. You could have informed us before escalating. Marcus tilted his head slightly. I did. Last night. Silence. Stanton's jaw tightened, but only slightly. I believe Officer Caldwell acted independently, Stanton said carefully. He has a history of strong enforcement, not misconduct. Marcus stepped aside and gestured toward the screen. Pierce pulled up a grid of footage thumbnails. Caldwell's face repeated. Different nights, different drivers, same posture, same escalation, same narrative in reports. Stanton watched quietly. His breathing changed just once. That doesn't prove systemic failure, he said. Marcus's voice remained calm. It proves tolerance. The hallway behind Stanton filled slowly with officers pretending to pass by, everyone listening. Stanton lowered his voice. You understand what happens when departments are destabilized publicly. Marcus did not blink. Yes. And you understand political implications. Yes. Stanton leaned closer. You may win a headline, he said softly, but you could lose cooperation for years. Marcus's expression didn't move. I'm not here for cooperation built on silence. The words landed heavier than shouting. Stanton straightened. You're young, he said quietly. Marcus almost smiled. I'm patient. That landed differently, because patience was more dangerous than anger. Pierce stepped in. We flagged 14 incidents directly tied to Caldwell that contradict internal reports. 7 involve force escalation without documented cause. 3 involve searches without consent. 2 include supervisory sign-off that contradicts footage. She looked at Stanton. Your signature appears on 2. The room held its breath. Stanton's face remained controlled. I sign what I'm told is reviewed properly. Marcus spoke calmly. And who reviews it? Stanton did not answer immediately. Markham shifted. Ellison looked down. Marcus stepped closer. When complaints come in, Marcus continued evenly. What percentage reach your desk? Stanton met his eyes. All serious complaints. And who defines serious? Silence. There it is. Marcus let the silence stretch. Silence forces truth to feel heavier. Stanton exhaled slowly. You're suggesting I ignored misconduct. I'm suggesting you trusted a system that protected itself. Stanton's eyes sharpened. You think you can fix culture from the outside? Marcus didn't hesitate. I don't need to fix it, I need to expose it. That was the first real crack, because exposure cannot be negotiated. Stanton glanced toward the hallway again, officers listening, fear spreading. And then something shifted. A radio crackled from down the corridor. An officer rushed past the doorway. Sir, he said, breathless to Ellison. There's a crowd forming outside. Marcus didn't look surprised. Stanton did. What crowd? He demanded. Community group, news vans. They're saying federal agents are here. Stanton's jaw tightened. Marcus's voice remained level. Transparency travels fast. Stanton stepped toward him, voice dropping. You think this ends with Caldwell? He asked. No, Marcus replied. Then you're naive. Marcus shook his head slightly. No, I'm thorough. Stanton studied him for a long second. Then something colder entered his eyes. You should be careful, Stanton said softly. Not everyone appreciates being measured. Marcus held his gaze. Then they should behave like they are. The tension between them was no longer about one officer. It was about control. Stanton turned abruptly. Captain Ellison, lock down internal communications. No statements without approval. Marcus's voice cut in calmly. You don't have that authority right now. Stanton stopped mid-step. I beg your pardon. Marcus reached into his jacket and handed Pierce a folded document. She unfolded it and passed it to Stanton. Federal Temporary Oversight Order, effective immediately. Deputy Chief Harold Stanton, subject to review pending investigation. Stanton read it. Once, twice. His face did not explode. It drained. This is political, he said quietly. No, Marcus replied. This is documentation. Stanton's voice hardened. You're making enemies. Marcus's answer was simple. They were already enemies. They just didn't know it. For the first time since entering the building, Stanton looked unsure, not afraid, but calculating. Because men like him did not panic. They strategized. He handed the paper back. You have 72 hours before this turns into something bigger than you, Stanton said quietly. Marcus nodded once. Good. Stanton walked out. The hallway parted for him like it always had, but the energy was different now. He was no longer the tallest figure in the building. He was a man under review. As soon as he disappeared around the corner, Pierce leaned closer to Marcus. He's not done, she said. I know. You think he'll retaliate? Marcus looked toward the dark windows of the precinct. Yes. And almost on cue, Pierce's secure phone vibrated. She checked it. Her expression tightened. We've got a problem. Marcus turned. What? Internal leak, she said quietly. Someone just accessed your embedded profile from within this building. Marcus's eyes sharpened. They weren't supposed to know how long I've been here. Pierce nodded. They do now. The hallway suddenly felt smaller. Marcus scanned the faces lingering nearby. Some looked confused, some looked angry, one looked terrified, and one looked calculating. Lieutenant Markham. He stood too still, too quiet. Marcus felt the shift instantly. Who else had archive master access? Marcus asked calmly. Pierce checked her tablet. Markham, Stanton, and you. Marcus nodded once. He turned slowly toward Markham. Markham forced a tight smile. Something wrong? He asked. Marcus stepped closer. How long have you known about the restrictions in the archive? Marcus asked evenly. Markham's throat moved. I just enforce policy. Marcus held his gaze. Who told you to lock it? Markham hesitated. Too long. That's what I thought, Marcus said quietly. Markham's face flushed. You think I'm your mole? He snapped. I think you're afraid, Marcus replied. That landed harder than accusation. Markham's composure cracked slightly. You have no idea what pressure looks like in this building, he said under his breath. Marcus leaned in slightly. Then show me. Markham's eyes flicked toward the hallway, toward Stanton's direction. Marcus saw it. Connection. Fear, tied to hierarchy. Pierce stepped forward. We just traced the internal profile access to Markham's terminal, she said calmly. Silence. Markham froze. I was verifying credentials, he said quickly. Marcus's voice remained steady. You were checking how long I've been here. Markham didn't answer. That was answer enough. The room thickened with tension. Officers in the hallway leaned in closer. Marcus spoke quietly, but clearly. Lieutenant Markham, you are temporarily relieved pending investigation. Markham's face twisted. You can't just... Yes, Marcus said. Two federal agents stepped forward. Markham's shoulders slumped slightly. Not because he was caught, because he knew what would come next. And somewhere in the building, Deputy Chief Stanton received a text message. It read, Markham detained. Stanton stared at the screen in silence. Then he smiled. Because this was no longer about one officer. It was about survival, and men who build careers on controlled silence do not collapse easily. They adapt. Outside, cameras flashed, community members chanted, news vans multiplied. Inside, federal agents secured terminals and copied drives. Marcus stood still in the center of the storm, calm, measured, because retaliation was coming, not loud, not obvious, strategic, and he had just stepped into a game that had been played long before he arrived. But this time, someone inside the system understood the rules, and that made it dangerous. For everyone. The first strike did not come from inside the precinct. It came from a headline. By noon the next day, every major local outlet had picked up the story. Federal agent arrested by local police. Civil rights investigation underway. Multiple officers suspended. But buried beneath the reporting, quietly inserted between quotes and speculation, was a different narrative beginning to take shape. Anonymous sources claim the federal agent initiated confrontation. Department officials suggest aggressive behavior may have escalated. Stop. Marcus read it without emotion. He sat in a temporary operations room 2 floors above the precinct floor. Converted conference space, blinds half drawn, screens glowing with case files and media monitoring dashboards. Pierce stood behind him. They're testing public doubt, she said. Marcus nodded. Of course they are. Because exposure is one thing, control of the story is another. And Deputy Chief Stanton had friends. By mid-afternoon, a national law enforcement advocacy group issued a statement condemning federal overreach and targeted harassment of proactive officers. Marcus didn't respond. He never responded immediately. Immediate response signals, defensiveness. Silent signals, preparation. Pierce's secure phone buzzed again. She glanced at it. "They've requested your field conduct records," she said. Marcus leaned back slightly. "From who?" "Department of Justice liaison. It's coming from internal channels." Marcus's eyes sharpened. "They're trying to discredit." Pierce nodded. "If they can suggest you've had complaints before." "They weaken the narrative," Marcus finished. He stood. "Send them everything." Pierce blinked once. "All of it?" "All of it. Because transparency only works when it's absolute." The door opened quietly. Officer Jason Miller stepped inside. He looked different today. Not scared, not shaken. Focused. "There's chatter downstairs," Miller said. "What kind?" Marcus asked. "They're saying you've been targeting this department specifically, that you transferred here after failing another investigation." Marcus studied him. "And what do you think?" Miller hesitated. "I think they're scared." Marcus nodded once. "Good." Miller shifted. "Sir?" "Deputy Chief Stanton just left the building. Media's waiting outside." Marcus walked to the window and tilted the blinds slightly. Below, cameras clustered near the entrance. Stanton stood at a podium flanked by city officials. Even from this distance, Marcus could see the performance. Controlled posture, measured pauses, strategic phrases. Pierce turned on the muted television in the corner. Stanton's voice filled the room. "While we respect federal oversight, we must also protect our officers from politically motivated investigations." Marcus watched without blinking. The individual in question failed to identify himself as federal law enforcement during the stop. There it was, subtle blame shift. And escalated the encounter unnecessarily. Pierce muted the feed again. "He's good," she said quietly. Marcus nodded. "He's experienced." Stanton wasn't yelling. He wasn't defensive. He was reframing. He was planting doubt. And doubt spreads faster than facts. Pierce's phone buzzed again. Her expression shifted. "They're leaking partial footage," she said. Marcus turned. "Which part?" "Just the moment you refuse consent. None of the strike." Marcus's jaw tightened slightly. "Because edited truth is more dangerous than lies." Pierce brought the clip up on screen. It showed Marcus calmly saying, "I do not consent to searches." Cut. The next clip showed Caldwell saying, "You're under arrest." Cut. No shove, no strike, no escalation. The narrative forming online was immediate. He must have done something before. We don't see the full video. Why didn't he identify himself? Marcus exhaled slowly. "Release the full footage," he said. Pierce hesitated. "Without redaction?" "Full." Pierce studied him. "That escalates the war." Marcus's voice remained steady. "It ends it. Because once full footage surfaces, narrative control collapses." Pierce nodded. Within minutes, the unedited video was transmitted to major outlets and uploaded to official channels. The internet shifted. Slowly at first, then violently. The strike landed again, this time in high definition. The shove replayed. The tightening cuffs visible, Caldwell's face caught mid-anger. And Marcus, still, unreactive, measured. The comment sections turned. He didn't identify himself because he didn't have to. That officer escalated immediately. How many others has this happened to? Stanton's press conference ended abruptly. He stepped away from cameras. His phone vibrated repeatedly. Inside his vehicle, he watched the unedited footage for the first time. His jaw hardened. Not because Caldwell was guilty. He already knew that. Because Marcus had refused to play defense, and that made him harder to corner. Back upstairs, Pierce turned from the screen. "That changes momentum," she said. Marcus nodded. Momentum isn't victory, he replied. No, it's leverage. The door opened again. Captain Ellison stepped inside, looking thinner than he had that morning. They're calling from the mayor's office, he said quietly. Marcus turned. And? They want this contained. Marcus's expression did not change. It won't be. Ellison swallowed. They're suggesting you and Stanton meet privately. No media, no escalation. Marcus studied him. And what do you think? Ellison hesitated. I think Stanton believes he can negotiate. Marcus almost smiled. He can't. Ellison's eyes flickered with something like relief and fear. He's not just protecting officers, Ellison said quietly. He's protecting funding, contracts, political alliances. Marcus nodded once. Then this isn't about Caldwell, he said. No. It's about exposure reaching above him. Ellison didn't answer. He didn't need to, because exposure doesn't stop at one badge. It climbs. Pierce checked her screen again. Internal morale's fracturing, she said. Half the department's distancing themselves from Caldwell publicly. And the other half? Marcus asked. Quiet. Marcus nodded. The quiet ones matter more. Silence in a culture of misconduct is not neutrality. It's calculation. A knock came at the door. An agent stepped inside. We have something, he said. Marcus turned. What? Financial anomaly tied to Deputy Chief Stanton. The room shifted instantly. Pierce stepped forward. Explain. The agent handed over a tablet. Private security contract awarded last year. Oversight bypassed. Linked to a consulting firm registered under Stanton's brother-in-law. Marcus scanned the numbers. Substantial, repeated, patterned. Pierce exhaled slowly. That's motive, Marcus nodded. If oversight expands, those contracts collapse. Ellison looked pale. You're saying this isn't just about protecting officers, he said quietly. Marcus met his eyes. It never is. Power rarely protects misconduct alone. It protects profit. Outside, sirens wailed faintly in the distance. Not for this building, not yet. But tension had reached a new level. Pierce leaned in closer. He's going to retaliate, she said. Marcus nodded. Yes. Through media. Through pressure. As if summoned by the prediction, Marcus's secure line vibrated. He glanced at the screen. Unknown encrypted source, he answered. Silence, then a voice, low, distorted slightly. You're digging in the wrong place. Marcus did not react. Who is this? Someone who understands the cost of what you're doing. Marcus's tone remained steady. Then you understand it was already paid. A faint exhale on the other end. You're outnumbered. Marcus looked at Pierce, at Ellison, at the agents moving through the room. No, he said calmly. You are? The line went dead. Pierce stared at him. You think that was Stanton? Marcus shook his head slightly. No. Then who? Marcus looked toward the hallway, toward the officers still moving through the building. Someone inside who believes he's protecting something bigger. Pierce's expression sharpened. We've got more than one mole. Marcus nodded once. Yes. And that changed everything. Because now this wasn't just about exposing the top. It was about identifying who inside the system would risk everything to preserve it. And somewhere in the building, another pair of eyes was watching Marcus carefully. Not with fear, not with anger, with strategy. Because if Marcus Hale wanted to measure integrity, someone else had just decided to measure him. The first sign of sabotage wasn't dramatic. It was subtle. A timestamp. Pierce was reviewing internal server logs when she noticed a minor discrepancy in the archive transfer record. The body cam footage from Caldwell's stop, the original unedited file, had been accessed again after federal custody was logged. Marcus, she said quietly. He turned from the window. What? She rotated the monitor toward him. Someone attempted to overwrite the raw file. Marcus stepped closer. Attempted. They didn't succeed, but they tried. The room shifted. Ellison's face drained. "That's impossible," he said. "The system locks one's federal custody." Pierce cut him off gently. "Unless someone has mirrored access." Marcus's eyes sharpened. "How many people have mirrored access?" Ellison hesitated. "3, he said finally. "Name them." Ellison swallowed. "Myself, Deputy Chief Stanton, and Internal Systems Administrator Peter Larkin." Marcus nodded once. "Where's Larkin?" Ellison looked toward the hallway. "He left early today." Pierce checked her tablet. "He logged into the system remotely 37 minutes ago." Marcus's voice remained steady. "Trace it." Pierce's fingers moved quickly. The IP location appeared on screen. A warehouse district on the south side. Marcus didn't hesitate. "Move." 2 agents grabbed jackets immediately. Ellison blinked. "You're going after him now?" Marcus looked at him. "If someone's trying to alter evidence in a federal case, we don't wait." Minutes later, black SUVs cut through evening traffic. The sky had darkened to deep navy. Streetlights flickered on one by one. Inside the vehicle, Pierce spoke quietly. "Larkin's been with the department 12 years. No complaints? Quiet? Tech-focused." Marcus stared ahead. "Quiet doesn't mean clean." Pierce nodded. "He's not political." Marcus exhaled slowly. "Then he's afraid." Fear makes ordinary people dangerous. They pulled up outside a low-brick warehouse with a faded sign reading, "City Data Storage, Archive Division." Lights were on inside. Marcus stepped out first. No sirens, no announcement. Just quiet approach. The side door was slightly ajar. Pierce exchanged a glance with him. Marcus nodded once. They entered. The warehouse smelled like dust and overheated wiring. Rows of server racks hummed softly. At the far end, a lone figure stood at a terminal. Peter Larkin, mid-40s, slight build, glasses reflecting monitor glow. He froze when he saw them. I was just, he stammered, attempting to overwrite federal evidence. Pierce finished calmly. Larkin's hands shook. "You don't understand." Marcus stepped closer. "Then explain." Larkin swallowed. "They told me it was a formatting issue, that the footage needed compression for legal transfer." "Who told you?" Marcus asked. Larkin's eyes flickered. Silence. Marcus didn't raise his voice. "Peter," he said evenly, "you're standing in a warehouse trying to alter evidence in a federal civil rights case. This is prison territory. If you're protecting someone, make sure they're worth it." Larkin's composure cracked. "You don't know what they're capable of," he whispered. Marcus stepped closer. "I know exactly what they're capable of." Larkin's breath quickened. "They said if the department collapses, funding collapses, jobs collapse, pensions collapse." Pierce's voice remained steady. "And who said that?" Larkin's eyes filled with fear. "Deputy Chief Stanton." There it was. Marcus didn't react visibly. "When did he call you?" Marcus asked. "After the footage went public." "What did he say?" Larkin's voice shook. "He said, if the full archive gets subpoenaed, it won't just be Caldwell. It'll expose command-level sign-offs. It'll trigger state review. He said the city can't survive that kind of federal interference." Marcus studied him. "And you believed him?" Larkin's shoulders sagged. "I've got 2 kids," he whispered. Marcus's tone softened, but only slightly. "And you thought deleting truth would protect them." Larkin covered his face briefly. "I didn't delete it," he said quickly. "I couldn't. The mirror protocol blocked me." Pierce confirmed with a glance at her tablet. "He's telling the truth." Marcus nodded once. "Peter," he said calmly, "this doesn't go away because you erase a file. It spreads." Larkin looked up. "What happens now?" he asked. Marcus's answer was simple. "You testify." Fear flooded Larkin's face. "He'll destroy me." Marcus's eyes didn't move. He already tried. Silence filled the warehouse. Then footsteps echoed from behind, agents securing the perimeter. Marcus looked at Larkin one more time. "You're not the enemy," he said quietly. "You're evidence." Larkin closed his eyes. Back at the precinct, news of the warehouse confrontation spread before Marcus even returned. Stanton received a call. "They've got Larkin," the voice on the other end said. Stanton stood in his office, lights off, city skyline glowing beyond the glass. For the first time since the investigation began, he felt something close to anger. Not panic. Anger. Because Marcus wasn't reacting, he was advancing. Stanton picked up his private phone, dialed a number not saved in contacts. It rang once, twice. A voice answered. "We may need to accelerate," Stanton said quietly. The voice on the other end remained calm. "Understood." Meanwhile, as Marcus's vehicle approached the precinct, Pierce's tablet buzzed urgently. She glanced down. Her expression shifted instantly. "Marcus," he turned. "What?" "You've been doxxed!" The word hung heavy. "What's out?" he asked calmly. "Home address, previous assignments, family photos from 10 years ago." Marcus didn't blink, because he expected retaliation, but not this quickly. Pierce looked at him. "They're escalating to intimidation." Marcus stared ahead. "Good." Pierce frowned. "That's not good." Marcus's voice remained steady. "It means they're losing structural leverage." Pierce exhaled. "They're targeting your personal life." Marcus nodded. "Yes. And," he looked at her, "if they thought they could win clean, they wouldn't need to." The SUV pulled into the precinct lot. Cameras still outside. Crowd larger now. Signs raised, some supportive, some hostile. Marcus stepped out of the vehicle. The noise swelled. Reporters shouted questions. "Agent Hale, did you provoke the stop? Are you politically motivated? Is this about race?" Marcus walked calmly toward the entrance. He did not answer. Because timing matters. Inside, Miller rushed toward him. "Sir," he said breathlessly, "there's been another incident." Marcus stopped. "What kind?" "Caldwell's brother was arrested tonight." Marcus's eyes sharpened. "For what?" "Assault. Bar fight. He told officers this investigation ruined his family." Marcus nodded once. "Desperation," he said quietly. Pierce leaned closer. "We need to secure your residence," she said. Marcus shook his head slightly. "It's already secure." Pierce studied him. "You anticipated this." Marcus's voice remained calm. "I anticipated fear." Ellison approached, face pale. "The mayor's office wants a statement from you," he said. Marcus looked at him. "They'll get one." "When?" Marcus glanced toward the growing crowd outside. "When it matters." Upstairs, agents processed Larkin's testimony. The financial anomalies tied to Stanton expanded. Contracts, kickbacks, campaign donations routed through intermediaries. The structure was beginning to show itself fully. And structures do not fall quietly. Later that night, as Marcus stood alone in the operations room, his secure phone buzzed again. Unknown number. He answered. Silence. Then a familiar voice. "Deputy Chief Stanton." "You've made this personal," Stanton said quietly. Marcus's tone didn't change. "You did? You put my family at risk." Marcus stared at the dark window. "I didn't leak your address." A pause. Stanton's voice lowered. "You think you're untouchable," Marcus responded evenly. "No." "Then why aren't you afraid?" Marcus's answer was immediate. "Because I didn't build my position on silence." Stanton exhaled slowly. "This won't end the way you think." Marcus's voice stayed steady. "It already has." The line went dead. Marcus stood there for a long moment. Outside, sirens wailed somewhere distant. Inside, the building breathed differently. Sabotage had failed. Intimidation had begun. And now, game was no longer about exposure. It was about endurance. Because when power feels cornered, it doesn't just defend itself, it strikes. And the next strike would not be digital, it would be physical. The strike came 3 nights later. Not loud, not dramatic, precise. Marcus had just left the federal temporary office downtown. It was late, past midnight again. The city felt hollowed out, reduced to distant traffic and the hum of streetlights. He walked toward his vehicle alone. He preferred it that way. The parking structure was mostly empty. Concrete pillars, flickering fluorescent strips. Sound carried differently in places like this. Too clearly, too sharply. Halfway to his car, he felt it. The shift. Not a sound. A pause in the air. Marcus did not turn his head. He adjusted his stride slightly, angling toward a different column. Then, footsteps, fast, behind him. He pivoted just as a figure lunged from between 2 parked cars, masked, gloved, metal glint in hand. Not a gun, a baton. The swing came fast. Marcus stepped inside the arc, forearm intercepting, redirecting the strike into concrete. The sound cracked through the garage. The attacker recovered quickly, trained, not random. Second swing, lower. Marcus blocked again, driving his shoulder forward, forcing space. The baton clattered to the ground. The masked man reached for something else. This time, a blade. Marcus reacted without hesitation. Wrist lock, twist. The knife dropped. They struggled for less than 5 seconds. Marcus didn't escalate beyond control. He pivoted, forced the attacker to the ground, knee securing the spine. "Who sent you?" Marcus asked calmly. The man didn't answer. Instead, headlights flared at the far end of the structure. Another vehicle. Engine revving. The car accelerated straight toward them. Marcus released the attacker instantly and rolled hard to the side as the vehicle barreled forward. Tires screamed. Concrete scraped. The car clipped a pillar, swerved violently, and reversed in a panic. The masked attacker scrambled up and dove into the passenger seat. The car peeled out of the garage before Marcus could reach the plate. Silence returned, breathing steady, heart controlled. Marcus stood slowly. He didn't chase. He didn't shout. He simply watched the exit ramp. Because that wasn't random, that wasn't desperation, that was orchestration. Minutes later, Pierce arrived with 2 agents. "You're bleeding," she said immediately. Marcus glanced down, a shallow cut across his forearm. "Superficial," he said. Pierce's jaw tightened. "This just crossed a line." Marcus looked toward the empty garage entrance. "No," he said quietly. It confirmed one. Back at the temporary operations office, the atmosphere had shifted from tense to volatile. Attempted assault on a federal agent. That was no longer political maneuvering. That was federal felony. Pierce pulled up security feeds from the garage. The cameras were grainy, but clear enough. 2 men, 1 vehicle, plates partially obscured. Marcus leaned closer. "Enhance the timestamp before the lights flared," he said. Pierce froze the frame. The vehicle had circled the garage once before striking. Not impulsive, planned. "Who knew you were leaving at that hour?" Pierce asked. Marcus didn't answer immediately. Because that was the real question. His departure time had not been public. It had been internal. He turned toward the operations room. Agents working. Ellison seated quietly. Miller near the doorway. One more officer, Sergeant Donnelly, new to the room tonight. Marcus's eyes rested on Donnelly for a fraction longer, then moved on. Pierce followed his gaze. "You think it's internal?" she asked softly. Marcus nodded once. "Yes." Because retaliation that precise requires timing, and timing requires access. Across town, Stanton received another call. "They missed," the voice said. Stanton closed his eyes briefly. "Then they're finished," he said quietly. "You want to cut ties?" Stanton's voice hardened. "I was never tied." He hung up, but the calm in his office was thinner now. Because once violence enters a political battle, control disappears. Back in the operations room, Marcus stood before the assembled officers and agents. He did not raise his voice. "There was an attempt tonight," he said calmly. The room stilled. "On me." Miller's face drained. Ellison looked sick. Donnelly's expression didn't change. Pierce watched everyone carefully. Marcus continued. "This is no longer administrative oversight. This is criminal conspiracy." Silence. "Whoever facilitated this believed fear would slow us," Marcus said evenly. He let the pause stretch. "It won't." Miller stepped forward. "Sir, you should have protection detail." Marcus shook his head slightly. "No." Pierce frowned. "That's not smart." Marcus's gaze remained steady. "If they think I'm harder to reach, they escalate again." Pierce understood. "You want them to try," she said quietly. Marcus nodded once. "Yes." Because escalation leaves evidence, and evidence leaves trails. Later that night, Pierce sat with Marcus reviewing call logs tied to Larkin, Stanton, and Markham. A pattern emerged: burner phones, short-duration calls, encrypted messaging apps. One number appeared repeatedly, unregistered, active only at night. Pierce traced the signal origin: industrial zone, near the same warehouse district as the server building. Marcus leaned back slightly. "They're using old narcotic storage facilities," he said. Pierce looked at him. "How do you know?" Marcus's expression didn't change. "I worked organized crime before oversight." He tapped the screen. "This isn't just department protection." Pierce's voice lowered. "You think it's bigger?" Marcus nodded once. "Yes." Because the financial contracts tied to Stanton weren't small. They were layered. Security firms, equipment procurement, training contracts, millions moving quietly. And if federal oversight expanded, those contracts would be audited, and if audited, they would unravel. Pierce's tablet buzzed again. She glanced down. "Federal prosecutor wants an update," she said. Marcus stood. "Tell them we're upgrading charges." Pierce looked up. "Attempted assault on a federal agent?" Marcus nodded. "And conspiracy to obstruct justice." The room felt heavier. Because obstruction tied to violence crosses thresholds politicians can't contain. Downstairs, Miller sat alone on a bench. Donnelly approached quietly. "Rough night," Donnelly said. Miller nodded. "They tried to kill him." Donnelly shrugged slightly. "Maybe he pushed too hard." Miller looked up sharply. "Pushed too hard?" Donnelly's voice lowered. "You ever think some things stay buried for a reason?" Miller's jaw tightened. "That reason isn't justice." Donnelly studied him. "You're young," he said. "You don't understand how fragile this department is." Miller stood. "Fragile things shouldn't carry guns," he replied. Donnelly's eyes hardened slightly. Because that wasn't naivety. That was conviction. Upstairs, Marcus stepped onto the balcony outside the operations room. City lights stretched endlessly. Pierce joined him. "They're not done," she said. "No." "You think Stanton ordered it?" Marcus paused. "Stanton doesn't get his hands dirty." "Then who?" Marcus looked at the skyline. "Someone who believes loyalty to him protects their future." Pierce folded her arms. "You're calm." Marcus nodded slightly. "Yes." "Why?" He looked at her. "Because tonight, proofs were close." Pierce studied him. "You don't seem angry." Marcus's voice stayed steady. "Anger clouds measurement." She watched him for a moment longer. "You really believe this ends with accountability?" Marcus shook his head slightly. "No." Pierce frowned. "Then what?" Marcus looked back at the city. "It ends with culture shifting, or it repeats somewhere else." Inside the building, agents finished compiling evidence linking Stanton's financial dealings to shell companies connected to security contractors. The numbers were undeniable now. Kickbacks disguised as consulting fees, equipment contracts inflated beyond market value, payments routed through family intermediaries. Pierce walked back inside and stared at the screen. "This isn't just oversight corruption," she said quietly. "This is enterprise." Marcus nodded once. "Yes. And enterprise crimes don't collapse with one arrest. They collapse when every layer is exposed." Pierce turned to him. "Tomorrow we bring Stanton in." Marcus's voice was calm. "No," she blinked. "No?" "Tomorrow," he said evenly. "We let him think he's regained control." Pierce understood immediately. "You want him to move?" "Yes. Because powerful men make mistakes when they believe they're cornered, and mistakes leave fingerprints." Marcus looked at the evidence board one more time. Caldwell, Markham, Larkin. Donnelly's name now circled faintly in Pierce's notes, Stanton at the center. And behind Stanton, money, fear, power. He exhaled slowly. This was no longer about one traffic stop. It was about a system that had grown comfortable believing no one would ever measure it. And now, it was being measured. From the inside. The next morning felt too quiet. That was how Marcus knew it was working. When powerful people panic, they move loudly. When powerful people believe they've stabilized the damage, they move confidently. Confidence leaves fingerprints. Stanton arrived at the precinct at exactly 8:03 a.m. No press conference, no visible tension. He walked through the lobby with the posture of a man reclaiming narrative. Officers stood a little straighter when he passed. Not loyalty, relief. Because when the highest-ranking authority in the building appears composed, people assume the storm is passing. Upstairs, Marcus watched from behind half-drawn blinds. "He's signaling control," Pierce said quietly. Marcus nodded once. "Good." Pierce studied him. "You're sure about letting him move first?" Marcus's eyes stayed on Stanton below. "If we arrest him now, he becomes a victim in his own story." Pierce folded her arms. "And if we wait, he becomes desperate." Downstairs, Stanton entered his office and closed the door. Within minutes, his private phone lit up. 3 calls. He ignored the first, answered the second. "Yes," he said quietly. A pause. "No, not yet." Another pause. They failed because they rushed. His jaw tightened. "We do this carefully." Upstairs, Pierce's screen pinged. "Burner phone active again," she said. Marcus turned. "Same number?" "Yes." She rotated the monitor. Signal pinged off a tower less than a mile from the precinct. Marcus didn't smile, but something in his eyes sharpened. "He's not calling from home," Pierce said. "No," Marcus replied. "He's calling from somewhere he believes is insulated." Pierce tapped keys rapidly, cross-referencing financial transfers with cell tower proximity. Lines moved across the screen, data layered. Then, a match. Pierce leaned closer. "Security Consulting Office," she said quietly. "Registered to Westbridge Tactical." Marcus nodded once. "Stanton's brother-in-law's firm." "Yes." "And the warehouse district?" Pierce checked. "Same operational zone." Marcus exhaled slowly. "There it is." They didn't move immediately. They waited. Because this part required patience. At 10:17 a.m., Sergeant Donnelly requested to see Stanton privately. Pierce caught it in the hallway camera feed. Marcus watched the 2 men enter Stanton's office. Door closed. Pierce amplified audio through remote feed access. Static. Then, Donnelly's voice tense. "They're digging deeper than we thought." Stanton's voice calm. "Let them. They've got Larkin. They've got Markham. Now there's talk of subpoenaing procurement contracts." Stanton paused. "They won't get past internal review." Donnelly's voice lowered. "What about the assault attempt?" Silence. Stanton's reply came measured. "That was a mistake." Marcus's jaw tightened slightly. Donnelly continued. "Who authorized it?" Stanton didn't answer immediately. Then, No one authorized incompetence, he said. There it was. Not denial, distance. Pierce looked at Marcus. That's liability insulation, she whispered. Marcus nodded once. Stanton continued. You panicked, he said quietly to Donnelly. They were closing in, Donnelly snapped. And now you've escalated a federal investigation into conspiracy territory. Silence. Donnelly's breathing grew heavier. You said he needed to be contained. I said he needed to be discredited, Stanton corrected. The difference hung heavy. Marcus stepped back from the monitor. He's cutting Donnelly loose, Pierce said. Yes. And Donnelly won't accept that. Marcus's eyes darkened slightly. Not if he thinks prison is coming. Pierce understood immediately. You want Donnelly to flip? Marcus nodded. Yes. Downstairs, the meeting ended abruptly. Donnelly exited Stanton's office with a different expression. Not loyal. Not confident. Cornered. Marcus didn't waste time. He stepped into the hallway just as Donnelly reached the stairwell. Sergeant, Marcus said calmly. Donnelly froze. He turned slowly. You need something? He asked. Marcus stepped closer. Yes? Donnelly's eyes flickered. Marcus kept his voice even. You try to have me assaulted. Donnelly's face flushed instantly. That's ridiculous. Marcus tilted his head slightly. Warehouse cell tower ping, burner phone contact, financial crossover with Westbridge Tactical. Donnelly swallowed. You can't prove that. Marcus didn't blink. You met with Stanton this morning. Donnelly's jaw tightened. You're guessing? Marcus stepped closer. I don't guess. Silence. The hallway was empty now. Marcus lowered his voice. He just distanced himself from you. Donnelly's composure cracked slightly. You don't know that. Marcus's gaze held steady. He said no one authorized incompetence. The words hit like a hammer. Donnelly's eyes widened. How? Marcus didn't answer. Because he didn't need to. Donnelly's breathing grew uneven. He told me to handle it, Donnelly muttered. Marcus said nothing. Silence is pressure. He said this needed to stop, Donnelly continued, voice cracking slightly. Marcus spoke quietly. And you believed removing me physically would stop it. Donnelly looked away. They were going to bury this department, he whispered. Marcus stepped closer. No, he said calmly. He was going to lose money. Donnelly's head snapped up. Marcus continued. Procurement contracts, inflated equipment bids, consulting transfers. Donnelly's hands trembled slightly. He said it was for the good of the force, Donnelly said. Marcus's voice remained steady. Then why didn't he take the risk himself? Silence. And in that silence, reality settled. Donnelly had risked prison. Stanton had risked nothing. Pierce approached from the far end of the hallway, slow and visible. You have two choices, Marcus said calmly. Donnelly stared at him. Prison, Marcus said, or testimony? Donnelly's jaw clenched. You can't protect me. Marcus's response was immediate. Yes, I can. Donnelly's eyes searched his face for deception, for bluff. He found neither. Upstairs, Stanton watched from his office window. He saw the three figures in the hallway, Marcus, Pierce, Donnelly. And he understood instantly. Control was slipping. He reached for his private phone, stopped, lowered it slowly. Because calling now would connect dots. And for the first time, Stanton felt something unfamiliar. Uncertainty. Back in the hallway, Donnelly exhaled sharply. He said if this collapsed, pensions would collapse, jobs, funding. He said you didn't understand what federal interference does. Marcus's voice stayed calm. I understand exactly what corruption does. Donnelly's shoulders sagged. There are accounts, he said quietly. Westbridge pays consulting fees. Stanton signs procurement approvals. Funds circle back. Pierce's eyes sharpened. How many accounts? 4 active, 2 dormant. Marcus nodded once. And the assault? Donnelly closed his eyes briefly. He didn't say attack. He said contain. He said fear would slow you down. Marcus held his gaze. Did it? Donnelly shook his head slowly. No. Marcus stepped back. You'll make a statement. Donnelly swallowed. And Stanton? Marcus's voice remained steady. Stanton will be measured. Within the hour, Donnelly was in a secured interview room with federal counsel present. Financial transfers were mapped live. Procurement documents cross-referenced. The enterprise structure surfaced fully. Shell companies, consulting contracts, bid manipulation, bribes disguised as strategic planning fees. It was no longer departmental corruption. It was racketeering. Pierce walked into Marcus's temporary office with a thin folder. He's done, she said quietly. Marcus nodded once. Yes. But he didn't move immediately, because arresting Stanton would not be symbolic. It would be seismic. Downstairs, Stanton stood in his office staring at the skyline again. He knew. He didn't have proof yet, but he knew. He picked up his phone one last time, dialed the private number. No answer. He set it down slowly. A knock came at his door. Marcus stood outside, calm, measured. Stanton straightened his tie before opening it. Yes, he said evenly. Marcus met his eyes. We need to talk. Stanton stepped aside. The office door closed. Silence. Two men standing across from each other. One built on control, one built on patience. Stanton spoke first. You've made your point. Marcus shook his head slightly. No. Stanton's jaw tightened. What do you want? Marcus's voice remained steady. The accounts. Stanton didn't react immediately. What accounts? Marcus stepped forward. Westbridge Tactical, procurement manipulation, consulting transfers. Stanton's eyes hardened. You're reaching. Marcus held his gaze. No. Silence stretched. Stanton's composure thinned just slightly. You think dismantling me fixes anything? He asked quietly. Marcus's response was immediate. It fixes this. Stanton exhaled slowly. You don't understand how many depend on what I've built. Marcus's voice stayed calm. They depend on honesty. Stanton's lips pressed thin. You're naive. Marcus stepped closer. No. Pierce entered quietly behind him. Federal agents positioned in the hallway. Marcus spoke clearly. Deputy Chief Harold Stanton, you are under arrest for conspiracy to obstruct justice, racketeering, and attempted assault on a federal officer. The words settled like gravity. Stanton didn't resist. He didn't shout. He didn't plead. He simply nodded once, as if he'd known this moment was inevitable. As cuffs clicked around his wrists, he leaned slightly closer to Marcus. This doesn't end corruption, Stanton whispered. Marcus met his eyes. No, he said calmly, but it ends your version of it. The office door opened. Hallway filled. Officers watched, some stunned, some relieved, some ashamed. Stanton walked down the corridor he once controlled, now measured, now exposed, and in that walk, the structure cracked fully. But consequences were not over, because when enterprise collapses, debts surface. And somewhere beyond Stanton, someone else had been benefiting, someone bigger, and they were not finished. Stanton's arrest did not calm the city. It electrified it. Within hours, national outlets picked up the footage of him being escorted down his own hallway in cuffs. The image looped endlessly. Authority reduced to accountability in real time. But Marcus knew something the cameras did not. Stanton was not the ceiling. He was a layer, and layers exist to protect something above them. The first sign came from Washington. Not praise, not support. Pressure. Pierce walked into the temporary operations room with her jaw tight. We've been reassigned, she said. Marcus looked up from the financial mapping board. Reassigned how? Officially, the case is being elevated to a joint federal-state task force. Marcus nodded once. That's expected. Pierce didn't move. It's being pulled from our control. That changed the temperature. Marcus leaned back slightly. By who? Office of Intergovernmental Affairs. Marcus's eyes sharpened. Who sits over that? Pierce hesitated. Senator Whitmore chairs the Oversight Subcommittee. Marcus didn't react outwardly, but he knew the name. Whitmore had publicly supported expanded municipal security contracts for years, and Westbridge Tactical, the firm funneling Stanton's money, had recently secured multi-city consulting bids. Marcus stood slowly. They're trying to centralize it, Pierce said quietly. To dilute it. Marcus nodded. Yes. When corruption expands beyond one city, it rarely collapses quietly. It relocates. He walked to the board where financial lines connected shell companies to Stanton's accounts. He traced the outer edge with his finger. This doesn't end here, he said. Pierce crossed her arms. You think Whitmore's office is connected? Marcus didn't answer immediately. Instead, he pulled up campaign contribution logs. Westbridge Tactical had donated to multiple political committees. Indirectly, layered, but consistent. Pierce exhaled slowly. This is bigger. Yes. Downstairs, officers moved differently now. Without Stanton in the building, something intangible had shifted. Captain Ellison stepped into the operations room. They're saying federal prosecutors from D.C. are flying in, he said quietly. Marcus looked at him. That's fast. Ellison nodded. Too fast. Pierce's phone buzzed. She read the message. They're requesting all original digital copies of financial evidence for chain review. Marcus's jaw tightened slightly. Chain review meant opportunity. Opportunity to stall. Opportunity to redirect. Opportunity to bury. He looked at Pierce. Mirror everything off-site. She nodded. Already did. Marcus almost smiled. Good. By late afternoon, a black government sedan pulled into the secured lot. Two officials stepped out. Tailored suits, polished shoes, expressions neutral to the point of cold. Assistant U.S. Attorney Michael Rhodes entered the building first. Behind him, a woman in her early 50s, calm, observant. Deputy Federal Oversight Counsel Elaine Carrington. Marcus met them in the conference room. Carrington extended her hand. Special Agent Hale. Marcus shook it. Counselor. Rhodes did not sit immediately. We appreciate your initiative, he said evenly, but this case has expanded beyond local jurisdiction. Marcus held his gaze. It expanded the moment someone tried to kill me. Rhodes's jaw tightened slightly. We're not disputing seriousness. We're discussing scope. Carrington stepped in smoothly. Agent Hale, allegations of racketeering tied to municipal procurement require coordinated federal oversight. Marcus nodded once. I agree. Rhodes frowned slightly. You agree? Yes, Marcus said calmly. But coordination doesn't mean control transfer. Silence. Carrington studied him. You believe there's interference risk, she said. Marcus didn't blink. Yes. Rhodes shifted. That's a serious accusation. Marcus leaned slightly forward. Westbridge Tactical holds contracts in 3 states. Campaign contributions linked to multiple federal committees. Senator Whitmore chairs oversight on municipal security expansion. The room went still. Carrington's eyes sharpened. Be careful, Rhodes warned. Marcus's tone remained steady. I am. Carrington spoke quietly. You're suggesting a federal official may be compromised. Marcus shook his head slightly. I'm suggesting the network may be larger than one deputy chief. Silence stretched. Carrington leaned back. Do you have proof of federal misconduct? Marcus answered honestly. No. Rhodes seized that. Then speculation weakens your position. Marcus met his eyes. Suppression weakens yours. The air tightened. Carrington held Marcus's gaze for several long seconds. Then she asked one question. Why didn't you identify yourself during the stop? Marcus didn't hesitate. Because rights don't require credentials. Carrington's expression shifted subtly. Understanding. Rhodes exhaled. We're not here to undermine your work, he said. We're here to protect federal integrity. Marcus's voice stayed calm. Then don't remove the only people tracking it. Carrington stood slowly. You will remain lead on the local aspect, she said carefully. But federal financial trails will be reviewed in D.C. Marcus nodded once. That's acceptable. Rhodes looked surprised. You're not pushing back? Marcus shook his head slightly. No, because he already anticipated this, and he had already mirrored every file, every ledger, every transfer. Pierce had sent encrypted backups to 3 separate secure federal repositories outside the oversight chain. If someone tried to erase the financials in D.C., it would be visible. Carrington paused at the door. One more thing, she said quietly. Your assault attempt has escalated attention at levels you may not expect. Marcus met her eyes. I expect escalation. Carrington nodded slightly. Good. She left. That night, Marcus stood alone on the rooftop of the temporary operations building. Wind cut through the city. Lights stretched endlessly in every direction. Pierce joined him. They're not going to let you chase Whitmore, she said. Marcus didn't respond immediately, because chasing wasn't his style, measuring was. They don't have to, he said finally. Pierce frowned. What do you mean? Marcus looked out over the skyline. Whitmore won't make a mistake publicly. Pierce waited. But the people protecting him might, she understood. Follow the middle layer. Marcus nodded. Yes, because power structures don't fall from the top down. They fracture from the middle. The fracture came sooner than expected. At 2:14 a.m., Pierce's encrypted line buzzed. She answered immediately. Silence. Then a different voice. Not distorted, not threatening, terrified. They're going to move money tonight, the voice whispered. Pierce's posture sharpened. Who is this? Doesn't matter, the voice said. They're transferring out of Westbridge, liquidating accounts. Pierce glanced at Marcus. Why tell us? She asked. Because I didn't sign up for violence, the voice replied. The line went dead. Marcus didn't hesitate. Pull live financial monitoring, he said. Pierce's fingers moved fast, accounts updated in real time. And there it was, massive transfer, Westbridge Tactical moving funds offshore. Shell company to shell company. Marcus's eyes narrowed. They're collapsing the trail. Pierce swallowed. If it leaves U.S. jurisdiction, it complicates seizure, Marcus finished. He grabbed his jacket. Call Carrington, he said. Pierce blinked. You trust her? Marcus's voice remained steady. No. But she's watching Whitmore. Pierce understood instantly. If Carrington stopped the transfer, it would expose internal resistance. If she didn't, it would expose complicity. Minutes later, Carrington answered. You're moving fast, she said coolly. Westbridge is liquidating, Marcus replied. A pause. Are you certain? Yes. Another pause. Send coordinates. Marcus sent the transfer logs. Carrington didn't speak for several seconds. Then, stay where you are. The line cut. Pierce looked at him. You just forced federal seizure on a politically connected firm. Marcus nodded once. Yes. And if Whitmore's involved. Marcus looked at her calmly. Then he'll know someone inside his structure just moved without permission, which meant the network would tighten. And when networks tighten, they expose their shape. On the financial monitor, the transfer stalled, frozen, federal hold initiated. Pierce exhaled slowly. They stopped it, Marcus nodded. For now. Because if money was moving, someone was scared. And scared networks make mistakes. He looked back at the skyline. This had started as a traffic stop. Now it was touching federal contracts, political oversight, interstate procurement, the assault attempt, the sabotage, the money. He exhaled once, calm, measured, because escalation was no longer local. It was structural, and somewhere far above the city. Someone was watching Marcus Hale carefully, not with anger, not with fear, with calculation, because when accountability spreads upward, it threatens more than careers. It threatens legacy. The collapse did not begin with sirens. It began with silence. At 8:42 a.m., Senator Whitmore was scheduled to address the National Municipal Security Forum in Washington, D.C. The ballroom was filled with city officials, procurement directors, law enforcement executives, and corporate contractors. Westbridge Tactical's logo rotated on a massive LED screen behind the stage. Confidence, stability, expansion. Whitmore stepped to the podium with practiced ease. "Security is infrastructure," he began, "and infrastructure requires trust." In a federal building 3 states away, Marcus Hale watched the live stream on a muted screen. Pierce stood beside him. "Carrington's office hasn't responded since freezing the transfer," she said. Marcus didn't look away from the screen. "She will." Because this was no longer about local exposure. This was about timing. At 8:44 a.m., Pierce's encrypted terminal pinged. Incoming secure transmission. Federal Financial Crimes Division. Carrington's authorization attached. Marcus stepped forward. "Project it." The ballroom in D.C. continued as Whitmore spoke about modernization and oversight partnerships. At 8:45 a.m., the LED screen behind him flickered. For half a second, no one reacted. Then, the Westbridge logo disappeared, replaced by a document, a financial ledger, highlighted transfers, shell entities, campaign routing pathways. Gasps rippled through the room. Whitmore turned slowly. Confusion crossed his face. The live stream camera tried to adjust. The feed cut, but not fast enough, because thousands were watching, and screenshots travel faster than suppression. Back in the Federal Operations Room, Pierce stared at Marcus. "That wasn't us," she said. Marcus shook his head. "No. Carrington." She hadn't just frozen the transfer, she detonated it. His secure line rang. He answered. Carrington's voice came through calm. "You forced my hand," she said. Marcus's voice remained steady. "You made a choice." Carrington exhaled softly. The network was larger than procurement. "I know. Whitmore isn't the top," she said quietly. Marcus's eyes sharpened. "Who is?" Carrington paused. "Corporate." The word hung heavy. Westbridge Tactical wasn't just bribing officials. It was leveraging them, expanding federal security frameworks, embedding influence in oversight committees. Stanton had been a node, Whitmore a gateway. But above them, executives, investors, policy architects. Carrington continued, "I've initiated federal seizure proceedings on Westbridge and affiliated entities." Marcus nodded. "And Whitmore?" "Under investigation." The line went quiet for a moment. Then Carrington said something unexpected. "You were right." Marcus didn't respond. He didn't need to. Pending investigation. Westbridge offices, pending investigation. Westbridge offices were raided in 3 states, financial accounts frozen, executive emails subpoenaed, and in the city where it began, the precinct watched in stunned silence. Captain Ellison stood in the lobby staring at a television as agents escorted Stanton from federal holding for transfer to a higher security facility. Officer Miller stood beside him. "They said it was just about one bad stop," Miller murmured. Ellison didn't respond, because they both understood now. It had never been just one stop. Upstairs, Marcus walked slowly through the precinct hallway one last time. No cameras now, no press, just officers. Some met his eyes. Some couldn't. Donnelly had already entered a cooperation agreement. Markham had signed a plea deal. Caldwell sat in a federal detention center awaiting sentencing. Stanton was being transferred under racketeering charges. But what mattered more? The Procurement Review Board had been dissolved, internal oversight restructured, body cam audit protocols mandated at state level. Miller approached him quietly. "Sir." Marcus stopped. Miller swallowed. "You ever get tired of being the villain first?" Marcus almost smiled. "You're only the villain to people benefiting from silence." Miller nodded slowly. "They'll rebuild this place," he said. Marcus's voice remained calm. "Yes. And?" Marcus met his eyes. "Measure it." Miller understood. Accountability is not an event. It's maintenance. Outside, the crowd had thinned. Supporters lingered. Critics, too. Marcus stepped onto the front steps of the building. Cameras rose instinctively. But this time, he spoke, not loudly, not theatrically, just clearly. "This began with a traffic stop," he said. "An officer believed authority protected him from consequence." He paused. "It didn't." He let the silence stretch. "Power is not the problem," he continued. "Unmeasured power is." Reporters leaned forward. "Rights do not require credentials," he said. "They require consistency." A beat. "Accountability is not anti-police. It is pro-integrity." He stepped back. No shouting, no moral grandstanding, just clarity. Because clarity lasts longer than outrage. Weeks later, the indictments stacked. Corporate executives charged, procurement boards dissolved, oversight committees restructured. Westbridge Tactical declared bankruptcy under federal asset seizure. Whitmore announced retirement. And in the federal system, a quiet training memo circulated. Case study, Municipal Procurement Conspiracy, Hale Protocol. It wasn't named after him officially. But everyone knew. The protocol emphasized something simple. Embed, observe, measure, wait, expose, advance. Do not react emotionally. Let the structure reveal itself. One final night, Marcus returned to Interstate 93. Same stretch of road, same sodium lights humming. He pulled over voluntarily, engine idling, window down, hands on the wheel. No sirens behind him, no red and blue, just memory. He stepped out and stood on the shoulder, looking at the empty highway. This was where it began. A slap, a shove, a belief in immunity. And it ended, not with revenge, but with exposure. Pierce pulled up beside him in an unmarked vehicle. She stepped out. "It's done," she said. Marcus shook his head slightly. "No." She smiled faintly. "It never is." He looked down the road. "No, because corruption doesn't disappear. It relocates, but so does accountability." Pierce studied him. "What drives you?" she asked quietly. Marcus thought for a moment, then answered. "Silence." She frowned slightly. He clarified. "I can't stand when silence protects harm." The wind moved across the asphalt. Far in the distance, headlights appeared. A vehicle approaching, ordinary, unremarkable. Marcus watched it pass. No lights activated, no profiling, no escalation, just movement. I exhaled slowly. Because maybe, just maybe, somewhere in that city, an officer hesitated before overstepping, and that hesitation meant something. He turned toward Pierce. "We move to the next city tomorrow." She nodded. "Already scheduled." Marcus got back into his vehicle, engine humming softly. He checked his mirror one last time. No flashing lights. Just open road. Authority survives when it believes no one understands it. Accountability survives when someone does. And somewhere, on another dark highway, someone would test power again. The question would not be whether power exists. It always does. The question would be, who is measuring it?